Hola grupos pequeños, bienvenidos a Talk It Over.
Sí, estamos emocionados de que sus grupos pequeños estén con nosotros esta semana. Lo que están a punto de ver y la conversación que van a tener les va a ayudar a profundizar en la palabra de Dios y a descubrir cómo vivir el propósito de Dios en sus vidas diarias.
En el video verán unos minutos de enseñanza, seguido con unas preguntas que van a salir en tu pantalla para que lo puedan hablar como grupo. Pulsen la pausa y conversen sobre lo que acaban de oír. Y cuando estén listos, pulsen play y sigan con la siguiente sección.
Los grupos pequeños son un lugar donde cada voz importa. Tu voz importa. Sabemos que algunas personas estarán más dispuestas que otros a conversar, pero algunos solamente van a querer escuchar. Hagan el esfuerzo para que todos tengan ese tiempo de compartir. Quizás puede ser algo sencillo, una pregunta sobre algo que quieren aclarar. Asegúrense de que todos participen, que hagan preguntas y que compartan sus pensamientos.
Ahora veamos el mensaje de esta semana. Asegúrate de dejar un poco de tiempo al final para que puedan orar como grupo y que disfruten de Talk It Over.
Now today, we're going to start with looking at what to do when you've had a business setback, maybe even a bankruptcy. Now, you say, well, I don't own a business. I'm not in a business. Well, you're going to draw some principles for your life out of this story where some professional fishermen were failing miserably in their fishing business until they turned to Jesus. Now, I know you're not a fisherman, but these lessons will definitely apply to your life. You know, my dad's favorite recreation was fishing. A day without fishing was a wasted day to my dad, and it was the way he relaxed. And so growing up in rural Northern California, I spent many hours fishing with my dad. In fact, on the property of the home that I grew up in the little town of Redwood Valley, California, we actually had a little but beautiful lake. It's about a 1 acre lake in our backyard. It was about 60 feet from my bedroom, which had a door to the outside. So I could literally walk out of my bedroom and in 50 or 60 feet be in that lake. So growing up for me was like a Huck Fenix existence where I had a couple of rafts that I'd built that were always on that lake. We had all kinds of fun growing up fishing and swimming and floating on that lake. If you've ever been around a fisherman, you know that they have fisherman stories. And the more they tell those stories, the bigger the fish get. And I can tell you some great ones about growing up and fishing trips that I was on, like catching sharks. I'm not exaggerating on this one. Almost as long as a little tiny boat that we were in with my dad and my brother out under the Golden Gate Bridge. We'd go out under the Golden Gate Bridge of San Francisco Bay and catch sharks. And I won't go into that, but today we're going to look at a story that is one of the greatest fishing stories of all times. And while we're in this series on turning setbacks into comebacks, we're going to look at the principles, lessons that we can learn. If you've ever felt discouraged by your work, by your job, by your career, by your business, if you ever felt like you're not getting anything accomplished, if you've ever felt fatigued, worn out after putting your heart and soul into something, maybe you've even lost your job after you had given it your all, well, you picked a good weekend to come to church because this miracle is actually giving us the lessons of what to do when you've had a setback in your business. Now, none of the fishing miracles that you've heard in your lifetime can match this one in Luke chapter 5. It's the second miracle of Jesus. So it's very early on in his ministry. He's only actually done one other miracle before this, which is turning water into wine at the wedding at Canaan. And we're going to look at this one that happened by the Lake of Galilee or the Sea of Galilee. And it's the miracle where he actually calls his first 4 disciples to follow him. Now, let me give you a little background. Peter and Andrew were brothers, and James and John were brothers. And these 4 guys had a fishing business together in northern Israel around the beautiful Lake of Galilee. Now, it's called the Lake of Galilee, the Sea of Galilee. It's called Lake Gennesaret. It's called the Sea of Tiberias. It's got 3 different names for the same beautiful lake. It's like a Lake Tahoe in northern Israel. And at this point, we catch the story where Peter, James, John, and Andrew, they're not disciples of Jesus yet. They're just professional businessmen. And they make a living catching fish. And they've been out all night fishing on the Sea of Galilee. And they've caught nothing, nada, zip, zero. And the lake is in recession. Nobody's biting right now. They're going through tough times in their job. They're catching nothing. They're making no profit. They've worked hard, and now they've come ashore in the morning. And after 10 hours of fishing, they're cleaning their nets with nothing to show for it. They're tired, they're discouraged, and they got empty buckets. Some of you can relate to that today. Now, Jesus comes along, and he's talking to a crowd. There's a crowd of people on the shore, and he asks these guys, can I use one of your boats as a platform to speak from? And we pick up the story in Luke 5. If you'll get out your message notes and look at the top, here's where the Bible starts. It says, one day, as Jesus was standing by the Lake of Gennesaret, that's the Sea of Galilee, with the people crowded around him and listening to the word of God, he saw at the water's edge 2 boats left there by fishermen who were washing their nets. Now, he gets into one of the boats, the one belonging to Simon, that's Simon Peter, and he asked him to put out a little from shore. Then he sat down and he taught the people from the boat, sitting in the boat. Now, I want you to notice that Jesus sits down in the boat to teach. Jesus always sat down to teach. It's more biblical, it's more Christ-like to sit down when you teach. Most people stand when they teach. Notice I'm sitting down, so I'm more like Jesus as we teach. Now, why did Jesus ask to borrow the boat? Well, there are a number of different reasons. In the first place, water amplifies your voice. If you've ever been in a boat, you know that you can speak much further across a lake than you can on ground because ground absorbs sound waves. So it's just smart communication. He could speak to hundreds of people, maybe thousands of people on the shore who are listening to Jesus as the water amplifies his voice. But there are actually a couple more important reasons. Jesus is about to choose these 4 guys as his first disciples. He's going to ask them to leave their business and follow him. So he's going to plan to do a miracle in their work, a miracle they're going to understand. They're fishermen, a miracle of fish to a bunch of fishermen. Now in verse 4, it says this, when Jesus had finished speaking, he said to Simon, now launch out into the deep water and let down the nets for a catch. Now remember, they had just fished all night. These guys are pro fishermen. Simon says, Master, we've worked hard all night and we haven't caught anything. We haven't made a sale. We haven't closed a deal. We haven't sold a house. We haven't stepped up our game. We haven't signed the contract. In fact, I'm out of work right now. We've worked all night, fished all night, and caught nothing. You can hear the discouragement in his voice. Now, sometimes this happens in life. Sometimes you give it your best shot and you still come up 10 feet short. Sometimes you work hard and you work diligently and you work long and you got nothing to show for it. We've worked all night and we've caught nothing. Sometimes you even do what you think is the right thing to do in your job and your career. You make a right decision, and you may even believe God is leading you to do it, and it just doesn't pan out. You've had a setback. That's what this series is all about. And you go start this business, and it falls apart, and it doesn't make a profit, and you go deep in debt, and all those things that you think that God was leading you in, it just doesn't happen. You know, sometimes you hang in there with your marriage and you struggle, and maybe you get counsel and you read books on marriage and you really try to make this thing work, but you just don't see any improvement at all. It just isn't getting any better. The fact is, this miracle has a lot to teach us about setbacks because everybody's fishing for something. Sometimes we're fishing for approval. And we're just looking for somebody to love us. And sometimes we're fishing for security. And sometimes we're fishing for significance. And sometimes you say, I want my life to count. Well, there's nothing wrong with that. So maybe you're fishing for a wife or a husband, or maybe you're fishing for who knows what. What are you fishing for today? He said, well, I'm fishing for a job. I need work. I need a new source of income. Well, there's nothing wrong with that. Everybody's fishing for something. When these fishermen, these 4 guys, did what Jesus tells them to do in this miracle, they not only receive a miracle, but they're blessed more than they can handle themselves. They actually have to share their blessing with other people. Wouldn't that be great to happen in your life? And their lives are changed forever. So Jesus uses Simon Peter's boat as a platform to preach the good news. And the Bible tells us the rest of the story. It says this: after Jesus finished speaking, he said to Simon, now launch out into the deep water to let down your nets for catch. And the Bible says that when they had done so, they caught such a large number of fish that their nets began to break. That's a lot of fish. So they signals their partners, that's James and John, in the other boat to come over and help them. And they came and filled both boats so full with fish that they began to sink. Now that's a fish story. Friends, you're not going to top that one. And I'm not going to top that one. That's a flat out miracle. Now, here's the point. They caught more in 10 minutes than they had caught in 10 hours when they did it the way Jesus said to do it. This is how you turn a setback into a comeback. This is called the miracle of acceleration. When God speeds things up, they catch more in 10 minutes than they had in the previous 10 hours. Now, when you understand the principle of this miracle of acceleration, you're not going to worry about timing. You might go a month or 2 months or a year or 2 years without work, but it doesn't matter because God can turn on the faucet as quickly as the other one got turned off. He can do more in 10 minutes than you can do in 10 years if you'll do it the way he tells you to do. Now, finally, I want you to notice the 4th thing that has to do with the comeback in your business when you've had a setback. First, I give Jesus complete access to my business, my work, my job. I get him in the boat. That's not salvation. You've given God your life, but have you given him your job, your career? Number 2, I admit that my efforts aren't working. It's not working, Lord. I plan to be a lot further along than I am by now, and it's not working. Third, I do whatever Jesus tells me to do. Because you say so, Lord. And where is that? It's all right here in the Word of God. You spend time in here. This is the Because You Say So book. Now, finally, write this down. Here's the 4th way to turn a setback in your business into a comeback. Expect Jesus to turn things around. This is the faith factor. Expect Jesus to turn things around. Now, follow me on the logic of this. If God tells you to go fishing, and God comes along with you in the boat, and God points out where to let down your nets, do you think you're going to come up empty? I don't think so. Really? I imagine at this point, Peter is quivering with anticipation. He's going, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. And all of the fear and the fatigue and the frustration he's felt from the night before, it's just passed away. He's going, this is going to be good. I've got Jesus in the boat. He's telling me where to fish. He's saying let down. He's not afraid of failing. He's not afraid of launching in the deep. He's not afraid of taking risks. Why? Because he's got God's presence in his job, in his boat, in his livelihood. God's plan in his mind, God's promise in his heart. There's no way he's not going to succeed. No way. If God told him to do it because you say so, he's full of faith. Now, follow me on this. If God can control the forces of nature, obviously he can because he created nature. If God created all the fish in the world and he created all the fish that were in that lake in the Sea of Galilee, he can command them to all come over here to one spot right now. And I can just imagine him saying, all you little fishies out there, I want you to swim over to this spot. All right, guys, let down your net. I just told them all to come right here. He can get you what you need. He can take care of you, but you got to do it his way. Now, he can do it overnight. He can do it in 10 minutes. After all the delays and the difficulties and the dead ends you've been through, he can do it quickly. Notice the results, Luke chapter 5. When they had done so, When they had done what? Given Jesus control, admitted their plans weren't working, doing whatever Jesus told them to do, expecting results. When they had done those things, notice, you need a new perspective on your work. This is the starting point from turning a setback into comeback. You need to realize, I don't work for the company. I work for Jesus. I'm a missionary. First and foremost, I'm seeking his kingdom. Jesus is in my boat, and I've given him permission to use my job as a platform for whatever he wants to say. Then they caught such a large number of fish, their nets began to break. They couldn't handle the blessing. They had to signal their partners to come over and help them, and they filled both boats so full they began to sink. More blessing than they could handle. They had to share it in order to not go under. You know, I've seen this personally in my own life. God has blessed me so much, I've had to share it with so many, many other people. God is looking for people to bless. It's not like God doesn't want to bless people. He's looking for people, and he'll bless your socks off if you'll do these 4 things. Right now, God's looking for people to show his power through. And what he wants to do is show the world that he is God. That's when God gets all the glory. Now, notice Peter's reaction, verse 8 and 9. Notice there in your outline. When Simon Peter saw this, the miracle of these fish, he fell at Jesus' knees and said, "Go away from me, Lord. I'm a sinful man." Remember, he's not a disciple, follower of Christ yet. He's just a fisherman. He's a businessman. "Go away from me, Lord. You're perfect. I don't even need to be in your presence." In other words, you're God. There's no way I deserve this kind of blessing. For he and all his companions, they're astonished at the catch of fish that they had taken. And so were James and John, the sons of Zebedee. That's Simon's business partners. Now, friends, this miracle is the turning point in the lives of these 4 men. Peter, James, John, and Andrew. And Jesus, here's the real lesson. Then Jesus said to Simon, "Don't be afraid." Of course, Simon's scared to death because he's just seen God do an amazing thing right in front of him. He says, "From now on, you're going to catch men. You're going to be a fisher of men." What in the world does that mean? Let me stop right here. This miracle is not really about money or possessions or financial success or success in your business. It's about finding God's purpose for your life. And it's not about keeping a whole bunch of fish for yourself. It's about the kingdom of God. Jesus is getting ready to call these guys to follow him 100%. But he does this miracle, and he says he's going to say, "I want you for 100%, and you can trust me that I'll take care of you. I'm going to teach you how to take charge in the world. I'm going to teach you how to be used by God to change lives and change companies and change businesses and change homes and communities. I'm going to teach you to mobilize how to fish for men." What is Jesus doing? He's getting ready to enlist these 4 guys in his peace plan. He's saying, let me show you what I can do if you'll put me first. Let me just show you. I can take care of all your financial needs if you just put me first. And don't be afraid. From now on, you're going to catch men. You're going to fish for men. And when Jesus called his disciples, I want you to notice that he didn't call teenagers. He didn't call children. He called grown men and grown women, professional business people, to leave their jobs and follow him. Now, this is the big point I want you to get. When you want to move from a setback to a comeback, they're willing to follow Jesus and leave the blessing behind because they were more interested in the blesser than the blessing. Are you? Are you more interested in God blessing you, or are you more interested in following the blesser? Are you just going around all the time praying, "God, bless me, bless me, bless me, bless me"? You know what? They were going to forget that blessing. It wasn't going to last forever. But if they follow the guy who did it, if that guy can do this, I'm following him because if I stay close to him, there's plenty more where that came from. I don't need this one blessing in my life if I'm walking next to the blesser. I can walk away from the biggest catch in my life, the biggest business deal in my life. I can walk away from stock options. I can walk away from an enormous deal. I can walk away from an incredible salary. I can walk away from benefits because if I'm walking next to the blesser, There's plenty more where that came from. Too often we're more interested in the blessing than the blesser, but they knew following Christ was the secret to everything else. Now, let me just get real personal. I believe that today, right now, those of you who are listening and watching, God is calling some of you right now to leave your nets and follow Jesus. You may have been a Christian for a long time, or maybe you're just meeting him today. Again, God called grown men and grown women to leave their jobs and follow Christ full time in service. And God is calling some of you to do that right now. And you're going to walk away from a great salary and benefits, and you're going to walk away from generous pension, and you're going to walk away from enormous stock options, and you're going to come work for a ministry or a church for a pittance of that price that you could have made somewhere else, maybe here in your own church, right here at Saddleback Church. Why? Because you say so, Lord. You know, on the staff of Saddleback Church, we've got at least, I don't know, maybe 6, 7 people who were CEOs who left their nets and took great pay cuts to come and serve. And they were all working for major companies, some billion-dollar-plus companies. And they left their nets to follow Christ. Now, you think Peter and John and Andrew, okay, and his brother, okay, James, do you think that they ever regretted that decision to leave their nets, stop being fishermen, and to follow Christ? No, they're never going to regret that for all of eternity. Do you think God was smiling when they made that decision? I think so. Do you think that that's what God may be calling you to do? I don't know. But I'm telling you this, there are more of you being called than you realize. And it's calling some of you to leave your comfort zone and to leave your nets, just like I left my nets, 38 years ago, to launch out into the deep. Others of you, God is saying to you, no, I don't want you to leave your job, but I definitely want to start using it as a platform. Can I use your boat? I'm going to use your boat, and no longer does your job belong to you. It's not your job anymore. It's not your source of income. I am your source of income, God says. I'm going to use your boat to preach the gospel, to use your job as a platform. And I want you to take these 4 steps so I can bless you. And I want you to give me your job and give me your career, and you're going to be a missionary in disguise as a teacher or a carpenter or whatever you do. And I want you to do whatever I tell you to do, and just say, because you say so. And then I want you to expect that because I'm in the boat and I'm telling you where to drop your nets, as I've promised, that setback is going to become a comeback.